Good afternoon, everyone. I actually had two topics I wanted to talk about, and since Repaying Shr started out with the Boy Scouts, I thought of talking about the Boy Scouts and the relationship between families first. And this experience I had was actually in Boy Scouts. People know you can go scouting. Oftentimes there's campfires in the evening. People know that, and around the campfire you're singing songs. And and late at night, you kind of sing songs, and everyone's in a circle. It's a really good male bonding experience, out in the wild. I remember one of the scoutmasters had a guitar, and he sang a song that really hit me very deeply when I heard it in the campfire. I only heard it once. He only played it once, and it was called "Cats in the Cradle." I don't know if people have heard that song before. "Cats in the Cradle" with like one hand, two. And it's a very simple song, but it's a theme around a father and a son. And I won't sing it. I have the notes in my pockets, but I'll see if I can remember it. So it starts off like this. It starts, my son came to the world just the other day. He came into the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to talk when I was away. And he was talking before I knew it, and as he grew, he said, "I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you." So that's the refrain, and then the chorus goes, "And the cat's in the crater and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, yeah. You know we'll have a good time then." And the second verse goes, "My boy turned 10 just the other day. My boy turned 10 just the other day. He said, 'Thanks for the ball. Come on, Dad, let's play. Can you teach me to throw?' I said, 'Not today.'" I had to get the notes. I was just trying to memorize it this morning. "Not today." I said, "I got a lot to do." He said, "That's okay." And then he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. He said, "I'm gonna be like him, yeah. You know we're gonna be like him." The same refrain, "And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, son. You know we'll have a good time then." Next verse it goes, "Well, he came home from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, 'Son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while?' He shook his head and he said with a smile, 'What I really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have them, please?' And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then." Right, so the son wants the car, right? Back from college. "I've long since retired, my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you." As I hung up the phone, it occurred to me, he grown up just like me, yeah. My son's grown up just like me. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, yeah. You know we'll have a good time then. And I remember that time I was listening around the campfire and it's very quiet. Can you hear? Okay. It was very quiet. Whoa. It was very quiet around the campfire, and I remember hearing that song, and it struck a really deep chord in me, because one of the, you could say, seeds of maybe why I wanted to become a monastic was because I really saw how disconnected families were from one another in the Bay Area. I grew up in Saratoga, which I think you could say is a very place where a lot of the Asian immigrants move if they're very successful. Housing prices is extremely expensive. It's got a very good school district because is part of the reason why. And I observed that many of the families had both parents working, and the kids go home into an empty house, and they just kind of play video games, do their own things, and there wasn't very much connection between the parents and kids. And as in high school, I started having a lot of reflections on, what was life about? What were we doing with ourselves? And I saw how much pain and suffering came from this very deep disconnect in the families. Fathers not talking to mothers, or husband and spouse not talking to each other, not even really getting along. Parents wanting to maybe communicate with their kids, but the kids don't want to communicate with them, or the kids want to spend time with their parents, but the parents are just too busy. I could see all these things. And I actually did a fairly systematic, as I guess maybe 16 years old, I was kind of systematic. I actually went through and started asking all my parents' friends individually. I'd actually go up to them, at maybe a dinner party, we had these potlucks, right? And I could pull them to the side and ask them, are you really happy? What are we doing with our lives? And I goes, do you ever talk to your wife? Like, ever? Like, do you guys get along? How about your kids? Do you ever talk to your kids? I really want to know, because I'm trying to figure out what life's about. And I would try to be really sincere and ask them. And my experience was that most of the time it was pretty much touch and go. There wasn't very many relationships that were happening in the Bay Area. I have one friend's family that really got along. People know the singer Vienna Tang. Some people know it was actually her family. Their family was, I thought, one of the few functional families that I knew from my friend group. But when I was growing up and going through that process, I had this thought, well, really, what else is out there? Because it seems like what society is putting forward as success, buying a good house, raising 2 kids in a family, all these things, and somehow people weren't really happy. There's got to be something more, something else is going on. And so that's kind of what drew me to look into, you could say, spirituality, look into Buddhism, look into Catholicism, look into different religions, because I saw that gap. And I felt really fortunate, because in the Dharma I really found, you could say, an answer to that gap. And I think many of us here who've been around for a little while have got a flavor of that, about how the Dharma reconnects us to our parents, with our family, in ways we never imagined. And so I was thinking maybe to share a little bit about this as well. Yesterday, I think it was Omar. He asked Dharma Master Lai and Reverend Heng Shr about what keeps people in the Dharma for long term. No, wasn't you? Who was that? That was Tomas. Tomas asked that question. What sustains you? And Reverend Heng Shr and Dharma Master Lai both answered the question a little bit. As a young person coming into Buddhism and looking at the monastery, and that was a question that was deep in my heart as well, because clearly, we're trying to make this a lifetime commitment. We want to make this a long road we're walking on, not just like a 1-2 year burnout. So I really was trying to look, what keeps people? How do people stay in the Dharma? And I looked at the senior disciples, and I observed what's calm, what's similar about them? What allows them to stay in Master Hua's teachings? And over time, one thing arose for me that really, at least it was my answer to that question. And I'm sure there's many other factors as well. But the answer to me was that they were almost all filial to their parents. And in continuation, also filial to Master Hua. If you look at Reverend Heng Shr, clearly he has his mom coming to the monastery, celebrating her birthday. Right? He clearly had a very caring relation, or a relationship with his father. There was this interaction. Dharma Master Lai, I remember reading in DRBU, she wrote an article about how unique Dharma Master Lai was as a young man, very unique. Marty Verhoeven, cared deeply about his parents. I'm Dharma Master Shun at the boys' school, went to take care of his mom for long periods of time during the summer times. Doug Powers took care of his father for many, many, many years, when he was pretty much just kind of, just unable to do anything. Doug would plan out all his caretaking and make sure people were caring for him. And so, and he always just says that, he was the last person anyone expected in the family who would take care of his parents. And so it's a pretty interesting thing to see. And so one of the things that I observed pretty consistently was that those who stuck around in the Dharma were those who were filial to their parents, who cared about their parents, who, we use the word repaying kindness. It wasn't this kind of filiality that came from like oppression, like you have to repay your parents' kindness and therefore suffer and therefore do everything your parents say. Right? That's not, I don't think that's the Buddhist version of filiality. Because look at the Buddha. The Buddha left home. Clearly his father did not want him to leave home. So it's not about just pure obedience, right? That's not filiality in Buddhism. But there's definitely a principle of repaying kindness. So when the Buddha awoke, what did he do? He went back home and he taught his parents. And so what I thought about was the first step to this healing for me was actually even being able to see kindness. Having grown up in America, I think usually my own mindset, and still very much is to kind of pay attention to myself, me and my desires, me and my interests. I'm going to go and find my purpose in life. That's why I said I'm going to find my purpose in life as being a monk, and that's what I'm going to do. And it was interesting, by doing that, it somehow reconnected me to my roots, to my parents, around this teaching of filiality. So I remember, since my mom is here, I was thinking maybe talking more about my father around filiality. I already told my story with my mom many times, so maybe talk a little bit about my father. And so my father, I would say, is somebody who is extremely practical and extremely efficient. He always wants to be as efficient as possible, to waste as little time as possible. And so what that sometimes translated to in my experience as a kid growing up was that my dad didn't participate in activities that I did as much as, say, my mom. My mom was the kind of person who come to like everything. She'd like follow me around. So she's been on the school board now for, 18 years, because she was on my middle school board. She was my high school board, and then she'd follow me to Boy Scouts. She still was on the Boy Scouts, and then, now at the RBU as well. She just kind of followed me around. But my dad he's efficient. My dad is very efficient, so he's not somebody who wants to waste time, you could say, just kind of like coming to a play or coming to a musical, unless he got like a job to like videotape it or something. Then he's like, I got a job, I have to do something. But otherwise, he's not somebody who just kind of shows up. And so my experience of my father was, I always thought he was a good person, but I didn't have that sense of someone who really cared about me in a kind of a active way, maybe. Definitely when things go wrong, I knew I could count on him, but just not actively. And so one of the couple experiences I had after I started learning Buddhism really opened my eyes to this. I remember one time when I was at home, this was maybe sophomore, junior year of college. I came home for a break. I have a younger brother who is 6.5 years younger than me. And I remember in the living room, there was a big TV, and he's sleeping on the couch. And I think the TV might have been on, might not be off. Clearly he's been watching TV and he fell asleep and he's just laying there. And I walked by him and I go, Darren's fallen asleep next to the TV. Okay, that's fine. I walked into the kitchen. Then I'm getting something and I come out and then I see something that I've never seen before, which was my father was holding a blanket and covering my brother. And that completely blew my mind. I was like, what? My father is covering my brother with a blanket? Like, wow, that's amazing. I don't think I've ever seen that before. What's going on? And I thought to myself, wow, I wonder, does my dad normally do that? And I've just never seen it, And then I thought to myself, I wonder, did my dad do that for me when I was growing up? And I thought another thought was, how come when I walked by my brother, I didn't give him a blanket? This is kind of the thought process. Is when you start learning the Dharma, all of a sudden, a different part of the mind opens up. Before, probably I'll just walk through and just not even see it. It'll just be like, oh, I've got my food, I'm going back to play my video game, what am I going to do next, right? But I just saw him and I was like, wow, that changed my whole perception of who my father was as a person, as somebody who actually quietly cared for us when we didn't see it. You know, he didn't have any fanfare, no accolades, nothing, just gently putting a blanket on my brother. And I had another opportunity for that kind of experience when I was actually a monk. I was actually a novice monk, and I had to get surgery for some kind of physical problem. And I actually went to Taiwan to get surgery. And it was a pretty major surgery where I had to like take my bones and kind of what you call brace them apart. And I remember my dad staying with me in the hospital all throughout the time I was in the hospital. And it was a really painful operation. Literally, actually, it's like my chest was coming inward, and so they actually took, kind of like steel rods or metal rods, and pried it open. And so it's like, if you imagine you had braces, but rather than have braces going very slowly, it's like they took your teeth and they moved it all to the place they're supposed to go in like 30 seconds. You know, so your mouth is like really painful. And so I remember being there and you can't really move in bed, so you're just laying there in bed. And it's super painful just laying in bed. If you're just staying there in one place for 24 hours, it's extremely painful just because your body starts to get sore all over. And I remember my father there, and he would be there, you know, taking care of me, rolling me over, making sure I'm doing okay. And it was interesting to have my father kind of as my primary caregiver, you know, just caring for me for whatever happened. You know, something might associate with my mom, but not so much with my dad. And then I remember another experience was when I can't actually get out of bed, so we have to use like a chamber pot. People know that you have to go into the bathroom into like a pot, you know, for number 1 and number 2. And I remember having to do that, and my father's there, not even flinching, you know, just taking care of business. And I thought to myself, to my father, wow, how do you do that? You know, you're just like taking care of me without any like thought. It's like there's effortless. There's not a disgusting or anything. It's like, that's no big deal. That's just what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, it's just completely natural to him. And again, it brought me back to thinking to myself, you know, although I'm maybe 20, I mean, at that time, maybe 30 years old. Now I'm 30 years old and can recognize it. You know, probably when I was 1 or 2, that's the same thing my father was doing for me when I was that age. He changed my diapers. He changed my diapers. So he gets to change my diapers as well when I was 30, right? And so all of a sudden, this whole world opened up to me, which was, wow, my father was somebody who really takes care of me. He's not somebody who really talks a lot. He's not somebody who really wants to be seen for anything. He just kind of quietly takes care of things. And so that going back to the principle before was the sense of repaying kindness. And I think the reason why a lot of the senior disciples who lasted a long time was because they see that kindness from their parents, from their mothers and their fathers, in whatever forms they are. And they go, you know what? What's the best way to repay my parents' kindness? You know, one way is to make money and support them. One way is to, check in with them and see how they're doing. But in the Dharma, ultimately, we're trying to help our parents in a very ultimate way, or to help them with the fundamental issues of life, death, and liberation. And so within the Dharma, the deepest way to repay the parents' kindness is to really wake up, to apply ourselves in the spiritual practice, and so that amount of wisdom we have, that amount of blessings we don't have it for ourselves, but we have that to share with our parents, to share with our family, to share with ultimately all living beings. And so my sense is that that's really the fuel for practice. It's not about, I'm going to get enlightened today, and therefore I'm going to have to really seek after it and work really hard. It's because, wow, I've gotten so much from other people to be where I'm here today. What else is there to do but to practice and to do my best to repay that kindness? You know, that's the heart. And so that's something I really felt very deeply from coming into the Dharma very unexpectedly, because I was coming to the Dharma mostly just for myself, finding my own way in life. But that somehow more deeply connected me to my parents. So maybe in the last thought, we're actually having a family camp coming up in a couple of weeks in Sudana Center. And one of the themes of it is really trying to help families reconnect, to connect to our roots. And there's a lot of things that I thought would be very valuable to share with people about that. And there's not much time right here to share some kind of practical things about families. But I thought one thing or two things that came up that I think is valuable, actually not mostly, but already from coming into the Dharma and then seeing it, but then I've just been reading this book called The Boy Crisis that highlighted it. And there's two things, or there's actually a list of 18, but I picked out two. One is having family dinners. And I think family dinners is actually similar to what we do in the afternoon, in the round table kind of discussion in the afternoon, that you have the whole family sit down together over dinner. You have a topic, like maybe like what we had, something like, what have you learned from your parents? Or what was some difficulties that you faced in life that you've made it through? Or when you get bullied, what do we do? You know, when people tease us, what do we do? You know, we go around, each person in the circle or in the family, each person gets a moment, you know, however long they need, 3-4 minutes, each person talks, no interruptions. To be honest, as a kid, now thinking about it, I think that would have really helped in my family if every week, at least once, we got sat down and we had a chance to talk about some meaningful topic in a group, and we actually just went around and heard everyone, and then have an open conversation with a little bit of guidelines about one person speaks at a time, everyone listens to one another without judgment, and allow the conversation to arise. Because I think in modern times now, we can't really just rely on traditional values as much, because the traditional structures are kind of fluid. So as families, as a group, we have to all share our wisdom together. As parents, you don't know what your kids are going through now, right? Modern technology is ubiquitous. You know, I grew up even at a time when cell phones did not exist in high school. If you had a cell phone in high school, you were seen as snobbish. And this is in Saratoga. You know, so you can see cell phones didn't exist when I was growing up, throughout all the way up to high school. And so I think that's really, really important. Another piece that I think is important is, see if I remember it. So one is having family dinners. The other one is actually doing chores. I won't go into a story about that, but at one point in my life as a young person, my mom got me to do dishes because she heard I was doing dishes at my friend's house. And she said, "What, you doing dishes there? You better do dishes at our house too." And so, I said, okay. But I realized that actually that's a really good thing for kids to do, is to participate in the work in the family. The book actually says that you should make it like a team. Keeping the family together is a team effort where everyone has a job. Your kids have a job too in making the family work. And they have a job to do, and it's equally important as everyone else is. And I think that really gives maybe a deeper sense of purpose for a child growing up. Saying, I have a role in the family. I'm not just here just to please myself, and my parents are just taking care of me. I have a job here in the family as well. So in the family camp, these are maybe, say, two among many other principles we're hoping to explore in the camp. I don't know if here maybe we can even do that sometimes. People can try out their own family dinners, because I know we have quite a few families here as well. But that's just some of reflections I have for the family camp and repaying parents' kindness. Okay, Amidofo.